Welcome to Radio Row from
Row
Super Bowl 56, live from the LA Convention Center. This is Roy Kessel and Kayla Bradham for Sports Philanthropy Network, and we're very excited to have with us Karisa and Maxwell from the Sporting News. So, Karisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to get a chance to talk to you. We know in your role with the Sporting News that you're very passionate about social justice, the work that's being done in the community, and so many things like that. Would love to hear, first of all, how you develop that passion yourself, and then, within the context of the work that you do with the Sporting News, how you're able to utilize your platform to address some of those issues.
Yeah, so I've always had an interest in storytelling. That's why I got into this industry. And for sports, I've never been the person that cared about the X's and O's or what's really happening on the field, but I always love the storylines, because at the end of the day, sports are emotional. It's a universal language that unites a lot of people. So sports have been a great outlet to tell those stories and to have the ability to humanize athletes and show that they have the same struggles as us. They fight for the same things as us unathletic people, myself very much included in that category. It's always something that I've just personally been passionate about, and sports have taught me so much about different issues because of the platforms that these athletes have to bring awareness to a lot of different issues. So in my role at Sporting News, I try to stick to the topics that matter, and I want to tell the stories that matter. They might not get the most views, they might not go viral, but it's work that is meaningful. And even if just one person hears it that feels inspired to make a difference and take action, then I'm doing my job. So I always tend to ask those questions that make people think and make people want to take action.
So, Chris, I love that, because I've dedicated my life to creating hope and possibility through sports. You're like my soulmate. So I have to ask you, just said, for the things that matter. So let's, just kind of roll up our sleeves a little bit and talk about the things that matter. What are the things that you're most passionate about reporting when it comes to using sports for social good and social change?
So there's multiple layers to it. As a woman in sports, obviously I have my own struggles that, my laptop has a very similar sticker. There's struggles that are obvious. My coworker will ask a question to an athlete. I'll ask the same question to another athlete, and I'll get the, oh, wow, you know what you're talking about, but he doesn't. So you feel like you have to constantly prove yourself. You have to represent yourself in a way where you're not only giving yourself justice to your professionalism and how you want to be viewed, but also representing the brand that you work for. So there's always a little bit of that. I'm always trying to advocate for women to feel like they have a place in sports, whether it's on the field or on the sidelines, behind the scenes. They deserve to be here. We're smart. We have perspectives, and that plays into the second thing that I think is most important, is having the right perspectives and the right people telling the right stories. Diversity in a newsroom is a huge topic, and it's something that still needs to be improved upon, not just with men or women, but having people of different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, different experiences. So that way, when you're telling a story of an athlete or someone within the sports world with a similar experience, you can relate in a way that provides nuance and makes the story resonate with an audience in a way that someone who can't relate to that experience could never do, because how could they? They don't understand the context behind what this person is going through.
So that resonates with me so much. And for anybody who's watching this or listening, and Chris is saying, oh, I have a very similar sticker on my laptop. My computer has 2 women in sports stickers and a sticker supporting the Sports Bra Project. And again, we talk about things we never talk about. So we would never send a boy or a man into a football game without a cup. We just wouldn't think about it. It's just a piece of equipment, and we can talk about it, and it's no big deal. But girls and women all over the world are playing sports without properly fitted sports bras. And especially in countries where modesty is critical, it's an even bigger issue. So we talk about equity, diversity, inclusion, access, all of these things. Chris,
there's a thousand.
There's a thousand.
We're not even
right. I mean, we're not even talking transgender athletes.
We're just right here talking
women and girls in sports and access to properly fitted sports equipment. Nobody reports on that.
In fact,
talking about sports bras, like They said raw. And these are the things that we need to normalize.
Absolutely, and it's funny you bring that up because I do not write for the sporting news. I miss it. I love to write, but who has the time? But I have done one story for the sporting news, and it was about a female boxer who didn't make weight because she got her period and she was bloated. And it was a story that people were talking about, but understandably so, no one on our staff, because it's mostly made up of men, felt comfortable writing about the topic. And the few women that we do have on staff don't cover boxing. So I kind of fit both categories to where I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to start writing. Sorry to the editor. I know I'm rusty, but this is a story that needs to be told. And I'll be damned if I read a story by a man explaining how a woman feels when she's menstruating. I mean, I will not allow it. So for me, it was funny that I'm like, oh, this is how I'm making my writing debut on an iconic, historic platform. But if someone had to do it, I'm glad I was the person to do it because, as you said, these stories deserve attention. And just because they're not sexy or they're not something that people necessarily want to hear, that doesn't mean they're any less valid or important or impacting people on a day-to-day basis.
I think it's really important. You talked about the lack of other women writing for the sporting news and in most publications, right? You look back at the history of women in sports journalism and, going back to the 80s, with Lisa Olson in Boston as one of the first big stories where she didn't have the same access to the locker rooms and everything else. What's being done? What are you seeing out there, not only at the sporting news but in the industry in terms of cultivating and developing more women in that capacity?
Yeah, so there's a lot of there's a lot of organizations within the industry that are focused on diversifying the newsroom and different departments within sports. One of the organizations that I'm very involved with, it's called the Association for Women in Sports Media, also known as Awesome. So the sporting news, we partner with Awesome and we host an intern every summer. We have a social media intern that comes in and they work for us throughout the summer. And so it's always a woman, it's always a recent college grad or someone who will soon be graduating, and we throw them to the fire. We give them that hands-on experience, and it's all through Awesome, who has a literally awesome support network of professional women throughout the industry playing all different roles. So that is an organization that I have really bonded with, especially the past couple of years, and advocate for. And I also think that, again, playing into the whole idea of having the right storytellers, you always want to hire based on merit, right? No one wants to look at D&I initiatives as checking a box and saying, look, we did the thing, so progressive. That's not going to help your brand. That's not going to help grow your staff internally and allow them to learn. But at the same time, if you have candidates, one a man, one a woman, they're pretty equal. Maybe the male candidate has a little bit of an edge on his grammar or, has a little bit better of a writing style. But when you look at the makeup of your newsroom and your audience that you're trying to attract, who's going to be the storyteller that comes in and does something different, who can write stories in a way that nobody else can, who can resonate with a different audience, who can expand your network and your influence? Sometimes that plays a greater role than someone who's really good at spelling or, whatever other minor detail that they have. And I think that's the biggest thing that people forget about when D&I is talked about in the hiring process, is it's so much more than your technique and what's on a resume. It's what you can bring to the table outside of just tangibles. And that is something that I am a huge advocate for at Sporting News. I actually just booked a meeting on the calendar to talk about it next week with our HR manager. We are putting together an entire initiative for International Women's Day and Women's History Month. We had an incredible Black History Month campaign that I am extremely proud to say was 100% ideated, executed, produced, written, designed, everything by all Black members of our staff. So we are doing better at putting the right people in the right position to tell the right stories. But that doesn't mean we're done. There's still so much more we can do. And it's something that we can never stop advocating for it, because you can never just settle. There's always room for growth and for learning. And I am very proud to be the champion of that at Sporting News.
So what I'm hearing you say, Karisa, is representation. I'm hearing it 1,000 different ways, and every time it's coming back to me in the workplace, in the community, representation matters. And it's two words. And I can't believe it's 2022, and we're still saying, "Hey guys, representation matters." And I mean that literally. Hey guys,
Yeah.
representation matters. So, Chris, a question for you, and we're just about out of time. If Sports Philanthropy Network gave you $25,000 and said, "Karisa, use this money to do good," how would you spend it?
Oh God, really putting me on the spot here, huh? Okay, so this is a weird one, but this is something that I've thought a lot about, and my numbers are probably a little outdated. But a few years ago, a former company I was working with, we worked with United Nations to help developing countries come up with different programs using sports to help their economy grow, encourage education. And one of the stats that I heard that really blew me away, and again, sorry if I'm butchering this, but one of the leading causes of third world countries or struggling economic countries and structures being prevented from developing is due to underage pregnancy, because women are put in a position where they're in high school, they get pregnant, they have to drop out, so they're not getting an education with a higher paying job, they have to take a lower paying hourly wage, and then they're never able to gain generational wealth because that cycle continues. And what was fascinating about that is, and I don't know how they calculated this, but from what I had read, the rate of pregnancy, the rate of contraception was occurring between the hours of 3 and 6, which is a time when kids get out of school and before their parents get home from work. So how do we stop that? We need to create programs for kids to go and have an outlet and have some sort of discipline and something to care about and be passionate about after school. So all that to say, with that $25,000, I would figure out a way to come up with a sustainable program that encourages after school programs. And it doesn't necessarily need to be sports. I was a drama nerd. I don't have an athletic bone in my body. So please, by all means, do a tap dance, be a Broadway show. Would love it. But sports obviously play a huge part in that because there is a low barrier to entry. There are a lot of sports that aren't expensive to join. There are many sports that are, and that's a whole nother conversation about creating stronger grassroots programs. But giving kids an outlet to express themselves, to learn teamwork, to make friends, to understand that they have a purpose in life outside of just checking a box and going to school and keeping themselves entertained until their parents get home. I think that's a way that we can start a trend in kids from a young age. So if they go on and pursue sports, great. But if not, they're using what they learned on the field or on the sidelines as a way to set a foundation for a successful future.
Karisa, thank you so much for sharing your insight. I think that you really have a great perspective and come at it from a number of different levels, both, looking at it from the journalism side, from the workplace, and looking at overseas issues. And there's so much in that space that still needs to be addressed, right? We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX, 50 years. And you look at the progress, and we still have a long way to go.
Not great.
Right? And it's very disappointing to see that. So we want to thank you for coming on with us. On behalf of Sports Philanthropy Network and Caleb Bradham, this is Roy Kessel, thanking all our viewers and listeners and reminding you to live generously.
Thanks, Karisa.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.